Chapter 445. When Jingming closed his eyes and let out a slow sigh. He sheathed his sword and took off, leaving behind a single sentence. Fellow Gu, you're so hesitant. You'll suffer sooner or later. Please take care. Thank you for your warning, great scholar Wen, but how can everything in the world be as one wishes? There are always losses when there are gains. Gu Yeniying clasped her hands and took off into the air, sweeping away the clouds. In the blink of an eye, the three spectators who could not help but step onto the stage returned to the darkness. Under the completely collapsed bronze cauldron mountain, Li Qingshan picked up the bronze cauldron. It was slightly damaged, but it was still an arcane artifact after all. The night roamers who had scattered in fright gathered over silently again. They were all uneasy. Abandoning their commander and fleeing at a crucial time was unforgivable in any organization. Sir, where do we go now? Yi Mingzhu studied Li Qingshan carefully, but she was unable to tell whether he was happy or angry. Go back. Li Qingshan ordered. If they continued fighting now, they would lose the effect of a surprise attack. The night roamers were not used to moving under the sun either, so it was disadvantageous for them to continue fighting. Aren't we going to continue the attack? Liuba's wounds are more important. Li Qingshan made his way through everyone and arrived before Yi Liuba. She was still unconscious. Li Qingshan stroked her cheek gently. He could sense a brutal aura rampaging through her body. It was the cause of her unconsciousness. It was Wen Jingming's righteous aura. Fortunately, Wen Jingming had been focused on him the entire time. She had only been injured by the counterattack. If Wen Jingming had diverted some of his attention to deal with her, she would have died already. Every heavenly tribulation was a realm of cultivation. And the difference was even greater, like a chasm. Yi Mingzhu reported with a frown. This aura is extremely stubborn, and it seems to suppress the power of us night roamers. It's extremely difficult to deal with. Li Qingshan waved his hand, and the pieces of the spirit turtle's profound shell gathered together, enveloping her and hovering in the air. She was like a crystal coffin. Li Qingshan exhaled. This battle had taken a great toll on him, whether it be his demon qi or his mental strength. Only now did he recover a little. His eyes became clear, and the demon core revolved. The spirit turtle suppresses the seas. Although his cultivation was profound, he had mastered all of his supernatural abilities. However, this was the first time he had used the abilities of the spirit turtle's profound shell on someone else. Yi Liuba's body trembled, and an expression of pain appeared on her face. The righteous qi within her body seemed to have a mind of its own, and it surged left and right, dodging Li Qingshan's power and causing even more damage to Yi Liuba. Master, Yi Liusu said with concern. Outside the clouds. When Jingming glanced back. Although the spider spirit had killed a foundation establishment cultivator right in front of him, he didn't miss. Beads of sweat appeared on Li Qingshan's forehead. It was clearly just a wave of righteous qi, but he had used all of his demonic qi. There was a feeling of being unable to suppress them, as if they were using a ragtag army to fight against dozens of elite cavalry. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before Yi Liuba lost her life. Li Qingshan made up his mind and bellowed out, "Suppress!" The spirit turtle's profound shell pressed down from all directions, burrowing deep into Yi Liuba's body and completely squeezing the righteous qi to the point where it could not escape. Finally, it was all used up. What a wretched demon! Cold light flashed through Wen Jingming's eyes. After a moment of hesitation, he left in a huff in the end. A while later, Yi Liuba slowly roused. She saw Li Qingshan and asked weakly, "Master, are you fine?" "I'm obviously fine." Li Qingshan's heart softened. He dispersed the spirit turtle's profound shell with a smile and placed a healing pill in her mouth. He picked her up. "Let's go." Yi Liuba was rather flattered before becoming overjoyed. She wrapped her arms around Li Qingshan's neck and pressed her head against his chest. She seemed sweet. The group returned to the underground dwelling. Li Qingshan placed Yi Liuba on the stone pedestal. "Rest up." Afterwards, he took out all the 100 treasures pouches he had obtained from the battle and began to reward them according to their contributions. "Liusu, you do the counting." Yi Liusu stepped forward under his orders and opened the 100 treasures pouches one by one, tallying them up. They had killed 9 Foundation establishment cultivators and countless Qi practitioners in this battle, so the spoils were extremely plentiful. There were 17 supreme-grade spiritual artifacts, over 100 high-grade spiritual artifacts, and almost 1,000 other spiritual artifacts in total. As they took out the items one by one, the eyes of every night roamer lit up. The various pills were a dazzling sight as well. There were countless of them. By the time Yi Liusu had taken out the talismans, formations, and various puppets, they had basically filled the entire cavern. It had become a huge treasury. My share first. Li Qingshan picked out the pills that were useful to him first. Just the virtue accumulation pills amounted to 4. Coupled with the other high-grade pills, it was enough for him to cultivate the ox demon to the 4th layer. Afterwards, there were a few scarlet talismans. Although they were all inferior low-grade talismans, they were quite powerful. Most importantly, they did not have any distinctive characteristics. Even if he used them as a human, no one would be able to track him down. He only chose the commander's tally for controlling corpse soldiers as a spiritual artifact. He planned on giving it to Little and along with the other corpses as a gift. As for the other spiritual artifacts, they were both useless and difficult to sell, so he did not take any of them. However, the most important items, the blood-red blade and the bronze cauldron, were already in his possession. The blood-red blade was obviously for his demon body to use. The main reason he had defeated Fu Qingjin this time was because he had taken advantage of the fact that he did not understand the mysteries of his abilities. It was no wonder that Fu Qingjin refused to accept it and was even bold enough to swear an oath like that. If he wanted to win again in the future, he would have to rely on the real thing. With the blood-red blade in hand, he would not suffer too much of a loss at the very least. As for the bronze cauldron, he could place it in the Immortal's cave to refine artifacts. With his foundation building cultivation, he should be able to refine it and use it. Although he could not even be considered a beginner in artifact refining, with such a powerful artifact in hand, as long as he spent some time learning, he should be able to refine a decent spiritual artifact. After he was done choosing, Li Qingshan looked back and said, "Liubua, choose 3 supreme-grade spiritual artifacts." Yi Liubua looked at Li Qingshan expectantly. Biting her lip, she said, "But master, can I change my reward?" "Don't mess around. Hurry up and go." Li Qingshan's gaze became even more gentle. After all, this was the first time he had received such loyalty in his life. Although Yi Liubua was unwilling, under his gaze, she felt even more unable to refuse. Risking her life this time was not in vain. Under everyone's envious gazes, Yi Liubua picked and chose 3 supreme-grade spiritual artifacts, a protective shield, a small bow that flickered with silver light, and a golden bangle on her wrist in the end. This damned girl sure has gained power. If I had known earlier, I would have treated her better in the past. Yi Mingzhu thought, not only has Yi Liubua obtained 3 supreme-grade spiritual artifacts all at once, but she even has priority in choosing them. They happen to be the best out of all the supreme-grade spiritual artifacts. Liusu has taken 2 too. It's all thanks to your plan that we won this battle so easily. Thank you, master. Yi Liusu also bowed and went up to take 2. She knew this had a lot to do with her not running away at a critical moment. However, she wondered inside, if it were not for the mission of revitalizing the night roamers, would I be like Yi Liubua? Li Qingshan turned around and said unkindly, "It's your turn now." His hand slid past the glimmering supreme-grade spiritual artifacts. There are 12 remaining. Originally, the 6 clans were supposed to take 2 each. The spoils of battle have been halved for desertion. Do you have any objections? Under Li Qingshan's gaze, the matriarchs all lowered their heads. None of them dared to object. Although they felt pained inside, they instead felt relieved when Li Qingshan had lost his temper. They each went up to take 1. Li Qingshan waved his hand. "Liusu, you can distribute the rest." Yi Liusu accepted the order and split the remaining spiritual artifacts, talismans, pills, and so on into half. She split the rest into 7 equal portions. The extra portion obviously went to the personal guards. It was equivalent to declaring the establishment of a new clan. Only by wielding authority could she carry out her ideals. The matriarchs looked at one another and exchanged glances. They were filled with doubt. The personal guards were overjoyed. Being able to get an extra portion was obviously a good thing. It did not matter who they were under. As long as there were benefits, it was fine. Li Qingshan nodded slightly. After a series of rewards, he stowed away the tremendous amount of resources. He considered the pros and cons of the battle and left behind his mirror clone to deal with the situation. His main body returned to the dwelling in the Chain Mountains. The sky lit up. In the Chain Mountains, in front of Qing Zhao's dwelling. Little An sensed something. She walked out of the dwelling and gazed into the distance. All she saw was a white cloud with a long tail as it streaked across the horizon. She smiled at ease. "I'm back." Li Qingshan scooped up Little An and whispered into her ear, "The battle was very satisfying. I taught that bastard Fu Qingjin a vicious lesson. Here's a gift." As he said that, he shoved 100 treasures pouch into Little An's hands. Before the battle, Li Qingshan had ordered the night roamers to collect the corpses. The 100 treasures pouch contained the corpses he had obtained from the battle. The corpses of the 9 Foundation establishment cultivators were all in there. Just like that, it was possible for the skull prayer beads to increase in power, and he could begin the next step of his plan. Li Qingshan suddenly raised his head. His eyes narrowed, and he saw Qian Rongji fly over. Qian Rongji landed on the platform gracefully. She bent down and placed the 100 treasures pouch into Li Qingshan's hand. She smiled. "This is what you wanted." She straightened up and opened her hand towards Li Qingshan. "Now, it's time for us to settle our debts." Li Qingshan accepted the 100 treasures pouch and opened it. After a slight calculation, he took out 2 true spirit pills. "Is that enough?" Qian Rongji's eyes lit up. She smiled from ear to ear. "It's enough. You're just as considerate as before." Suddenly, she straightened up. "Now, let's talk about serious matters. The 100 schools of thought are urgently calling for all Foundation establishment cultivators to return for a discussion." Li Qingshan thought, sure enough. "Aren't you going to ask what happened?" Qian Rongji asked carelessly. She thought, he seems to have just returned. "What happened?" Li Qingshan asked calmly. "The Demon Slayer. 11 Foundation establishment cultivators were killed, and 7 sects were destroyed. Among them, the Rock Demon killed 2, and the demon who killed the 3 elders 3 years ago and destroyed the Green Vine Mountain took action again. He led several dozen Foundation establishment night roamers and killed 9 people. He's now known as the Moon Demon. That's the current situation. What do you all think?" In the 100 schools of thought, Lu Chongqing was solemn. He used the simplest of words to explain everything that had happened last night. A group of cultivators gathered before him. There were actually around 30 or 40 of them. There were quite a few unfamiliar faces that Li Qingshan had never seen before. They had all reached Foundation establishment, but they did not assume the position of school leader. Instead, they had carved out dwellings and cultivated in seclusion. They also belonged to the academy, or in other words, the empire. None of them could remain aloof from the war, so they had all been mobilized. Chapter 446. Bright sunlight shone into the hall through the window, and dust floated in the pillar of light. The cries of birds came from outside the window, and the dragon snake lake was sparkling. This should have been an extremely peaceful morning, but the atmosphere in the hall was extremely depressing. If there were mortals here, they would definitely overturn the calm and composed image of cultivators in their hearts. Shock and contemplation were deeply engraved on everyone's faces. Although they were not on the same side as the Demon Slayer, and there were even many conflicts between them, but so many cultivators of the same status as them had died all at once. What they experienced was no longer just sympathy, but real threat and even fear. Li Qingshan frowned and pondered, as if he was lamenting the tragedy of the war. Ru Exin stared at his face, as if she found it very interesting. However, after Qian Rongji's reminder, Li Qingshan was determined to improve his self-cultivation as an actor. Especially in front of these people, he could not show the slightest flaw. Therefore, no matter how Xian looked at him, he looked like a stone statue named the Thinker. Xian soon felt bored and yawned lazily. She supported her cheek and looked at the sparkling dragon snake lake outside the window. Memories surged in her mind like a tide. The dancing sparkles turned into clusters of flames, burning the sky red. Fiery figures flew and danced in the flames like splashing sparks. Their fiery hair burned fiercely, and their roars were like volcanic eruptions. Raging flames spewed out of their mouths and scattered all over the sky like a meteor shower. The seawater overflowed the dam, destroyed the forest, and submerged the mountains. Thousands of mere people with fishtails swam in it. They sang in unison. If one had never heard it, they would not be able to imagine that the feminine and tactful mere people could sing such a soul-stirring war song. The song flew into the sky like invisible ropes, pulling the sparks into the sea and extinguishing them. However, they were also hit by the fiery meteors and turned into charcoal. Whenever this happened, the singing of the mermaids at the side would become more and more resounding and sorrowful. There would even be crystalline tears flowing out of their eyes, turning into crystalline pearls and sinking into the bottomless sea. After the cultivators recovered from their shock, they started a heated discussion. Is the moon devil really that powerful? What kind of monster is he? I don't think he's that powerful. Instead, the night roamers were just too despicable. So much for having people in their name. How could he help the wicked? We should have killed all of these mutants long ago and not left a single one alive. He's not powerful? I've heard that even Fu Qingjin of the Sword Collection Palace took action, but he was injured and left in defeat. It's just bullying with numbers. Bullying with numbers? I think you've been in secluded cultivation for too long, so you're out of touch. 3 years ago, he faced off against 3 of them alone, killing 2 of the 3 elders. It frightened the Green Vine elder so much that he dared not return to the mountain. In the end, he only dared to go back after obtaining a yin and yang dust formation, but he was still killed. Li Qingshan heard it. In the end, he even closed his eyes. He did not want to expose the smile in his eyes. However, he found it boring if he listened too much. He opened his eyes and broke free from the state of the thinker. He glanced around and saw Xian's face. His heart skipped a beat. A layer of mist clouded Xian's eyes as if she was looking at an extremely distant place. Sunlight fell on her smooth, delicate face. Before he knew it, all of her expressions had vanished. She was like a beauty carved from white jade, so beautiful that she was lifeless. For some reason, Li Qingshan's heart sank. He said to her secretly, "Xian, are you thinking about a man?" Xian returned to her senses and replied secretly, "I'm not thinking about you." "What's wrong with me? Am I not worth your consideration? I'd be better off thinking about the moon devil than you. I heard he's a handsome man." The teasing expression that Li Qingshan found familiar returned to Xian's face. She glanced at Li Qingshan from the corner of her eyes as if to say, "Go take a piss and look at yourself." Li Qingshan smiled. "Then continue thinking about it." This slightly surprised Xian. Han Tie saw the 2 of them flirting with each other. He raised his eyebrows slightly. Hua Sengzan said with a smile, "These 2 are really relaxed. It's worth emulating them." Lu Zhangqing raised his hand and gestured. When the hall quietened down, he said, "Many of the fellow Taoists here have been cultivating in seclusion and might not know much about this demon. Commander Wang, why don't you introduce him?" Wang Puxi's serious face turned even colder. He got up and went to the stage. He hung up the painting that Chu Danqing had painted in the past. "This is the Moon Devil. His original name is North Moon. As for his strength, according to the information I've received, he once defeated the Rock Demon and Blood Demon and was appointed as the commander of the Night Roamers by the Spider Queen. He's been in secluded cultivation for the past 3 years. In the battle last night, he demonstrated extremely great dominance. This is something that the Demon Slayer, or even us, can't match up to." With the 2 human organizations suddenly impeded each other, neither of them dared to unleash their full strength. A great battle against the demons would only harm them and benefit the other party. Wang Pushi continued, if you still don't have a clear understanding of his strength, then this morning, fellow Fu of the Sword Collection Palace went to Bronze Cauldron Mountain to provide reinforcements. He fell into an ambush and lost quite a lot of spiritual energy. After that, fellow Taoist Fu trapped the Moon Devil in the Green Ruins illusion. In order to wait for reinforcements, the Moon Devil did not attack immediately. When fellow Taoist Fu's spiritual energy was almost fully recovered, they fought, and fellow Taoist Fu was defeated. The hall immediately fell silent. Over the past 3 years, the strength and terror of the Rock Demon and Blood Demon had been deeply rooted in everyone's hearts. Among the humans, Fu Qingjin's reputation was the greatest. He even seemed to surpass a few veteran late Foundation establishment cultivators. The Moon Devil had actually defeated the 3 of them one after another. However, Li Qingshan could tell what he was implying. Originally, Old Wang was extremely displeased with Fu Qingjin, but now he kept referring to him as fellow Fu. Wang Pushi exhaled heavily. From today onwards, we've gained another terrifying enemy. The situation is extremely grim. A few days ago, fellow Fu brought the culprit of the Vermilion Clothes sect who murdered Hawkwolf guards to the Clear River Prefecture. Looks like he's interested in forming an alliance. Originally, I thought this was between the two, so I didn't want to say anything more. Now, I'm forced to invite everyone to discuss it. Li Qingshan had never expected Fu Qingjin to have already begun taking action in secret. If he had not struck first, probably Fu Qingjin would have led the cultivators in a large-scale attack. But speaking of which, he was also the greatest impetus for the two organizations to work together. External pressure would always lead to internal peace. The hall fell silent before becoming noisy again. However, they mainly discussed how to form an alliance. There were very few voices of objection. Li Qingshan obviously would not stand out. Wang Pushi saw how he remained silent, so he called out, "Kid, tell us, what should we do?" Li Qingshan stood up. "Old Wang, I think we should form an alliance. As the ancients said, without the lips, the teeth will feel the cold. If the demon slayer dies, the pressure on us will definitely increase drastically. However, the war was instigated by the demon slayer. Now that their strength has plummeted, we should use this to seize even more power and become the leaders of this alliance. We can't be ordered around by outsiders." Chapter 447. Everyone immediately agreed with Li Qingshan's words. Since the alliance was already set in stone, the most important thing was how to obtain as many benefits as possible from the alliance. The best outcome would be for the demon slayer to perish together with the demons they wanted to slay, and everyone could continue cultivating in peace. However, they obviously could not say something like that out loud. Wang Pushi snorted. He was rather displeased by the 2 words, "Old Wang." He knew this was a response to this kid. However, this bastard's words were very much to his liking, and he had some right now, so he did not mind addressing him like that. After another round of discussion, they finally decided to use Lu Changqing as the leader. Together with the other school leaders, they planned on negotiating with Fu Qingjin. However, they had no idea whether the meeting that was originally scheduled to take place would still go ahead now that Fu Qingjin was injured and the demon slayer was heavily injured. Li Qingshan did not pay too much attention to the meeting. He only felt that Fu Qingjin had chosen a very good location. As a sect, their school should have belonged to the demon slayer, but they had taken root in the Clear River Prefecture and had always mingled with the academy. They happened to be situated in an ambiguous region between the two. Begonia could be regarded as someone who was smooth and slick with people, so she could deal with them. When the meeting dispersed, Li Qingshan and Ru Exin bickered secretly as they made their way out. In the crowd, Lu Chuanfeng glanced at Li Qingshan. He wanted to say something, but Li Qingshan sensed something and turned around. Lu Chuanfeng's heart shrank like a mouse that had seen a cat. He lowered his head and left, which left Li Qingshan rather confused. Chu Danqing suddenly blocked his way. He bowed towards Li Qingshan first before saying to Ru Exin, "Senior sister, can you please visit my master?" "Danqing, you've reached Foundation Establishment 2. What's wrong with your master? Li Qingshan saw that he had also cultivated to the Zhuji realm. His face was less immature, no longer as dull as when he first came out of the mountain. Instead, his face was full of anxiety, and it was clearly not because of the demonic race. My master isn't feeling well. Chu Danqing forced a smile and looked at Ru Exin. Ru Exin asked curiously, "Isn't Grandmaster Chu's body being nurtured by my master?" Senior Huaxiai said, "You can't cure an undying disease. Buddha will help those who are fated. Fellow Taoist life force is at its end, and there's no cure for it. Thus, he won't come again." Chu Danqing's face was full of worry. Li Qingshan shook his head. That dark-skinned old man's words were really cold and direct. At the very least, he should have said a few words to comfort him. He did not know if Ru Exin had become like this because of him. "Since my master said so, then I'm afraid." "All right. I'll go take a look." Ru Exin was about to refuse, but when she saw the pitiful look on Chu Danqing's face, she changed her mind and agreed. Chu Danqing thanked her profusely and hurriedly led the way. Li Qingshan knew that he was just doing his best. He was grateful for his filial piety and could not help but sigh a little. A thought flashed through Zhang Xian's mind, and he followed suit as well. Ru Exin said, "What are you doing here?" Li Qingshan said, "To visit, of course. Grandmaster Chu and I have some fate." He paused. "I have a few pieces of calligraphy that I would like Grandmaster Chu to appraise." He thought of the 3 scrolls of the cursive sword calligraphy in his hands. The alliance was imminent and war was about to break out. Improving his strength as a human was a top priority. If he could restore the 3 scrolls of the cursive sword calligraphy, he might be able to bring out a powerful magic artifact. In the past, he was afraid of getting into trouble because of his treasures, but now he had no such worries. Painting and calligraphy were inseparable, so he could not count on Lu Chuanfeng. This matter still depended on the school of painting. Chu Danqing's worried expression eased slightly. He said with a smile, "Thank you, senior apprentice brother. My master is also very fond of calligraphy. Perhaps he will feel better after appreciating a few masterpieces." After several years of construction, the school of painting was already quite impressive. There were carved beams and painted walls, small bridges and flowing water. The scenery was pleasant, although they were always at war. But the school of painting's ability was mainly focused on painting. It was not practical combat. Therefore, they usually did not carry out dangerous missions. They were mostly responsible for painting on the island and handing them over to the 100 schools of thought to ensure the safety of the other disciples. Therefore, they did not lose many disciples and were very popular. They were all dressed in white, but it was different from the pure white of the school of medicine. They were painted with flowers, birds, fish, insects, mountains, and people. The murmuring of the stream and the swimming of fish were full of life. Under Chu Danqing's lead, Li Qingshan and Ru Exin arrived in front of a house covered by pine and cypress trees. The flowers in front of the door were not afraid of the cold and were in full bloom. Butterflies fluttered among the flowers. It was a beautiful sight. Grandmaster Chu's painting skills are indeed marvelous. Li Qingshan held a butterfly in his palm and carefully sensed it with his divine sense. He felt that these butterflies and flowers were not real. Chu Danqing scratched his head in embarrassment. "These are all my paintings. Senior apprentice brother, you flatter me. They are not as good as the school of fiction's wonderful method of deriving all things." "Senior apprentice brother, can you wait outside for a while? The school of fiction is good, but it has high requirements for the external environment. It is not like the school of painting, which can be done in isolation." "All right, go ahead." Li Qingshan nodded with a smile. He had almost forgotten about his identity as the top disciple of the school of fiction. However, when he looked inside his body, he found that the divine talisman of great creation had unknowingly accumulated a lot of power of wish. He could not help but feel slightly delighted. This is the benefit of the school of fiction. Even if I cast it to the back of my mind, it is still accumulating power endlessly. Although Lu Chuanfeng was rather pessimistic as the true leader of the Cloud Wisp Society, Sun Fubai had never stopped working hard. his persistence played a huge part in the accumulation of so much power of wish. If he used spiritual energy to refine the divine talisman of great creation again, he would be able to reach a whole new realm. He would not need to rely on the items in the books and could directly turn the false into the real, turning the illusory into the real. He would be a great help. Thinking of Lu Chuanfeng's appearance, it seemed that he should return to Cloud Wisp Island to take a look and plan his future plans. He had a vague premonition that this power would become extremely important at some point in the future. "Since you're here, come in." Chu Shidao's old and weak voice came from within the abode. Even though Li Qingshan did not know medicine, he could tell that Chu Shidao's breathing was weak, as if he was about to die. "Please." Chu Danqing could only offer his hand. Li Qingshan and Ru Exin stepped inside and saw that the abode was decorated very simply and elegantly. Chu Danqing followed closely behind, but his expression was slightly gloomy. This place was decorated exactly the same as the place where he learned painting in the mountains. That was the place where he had enjoyed the most warmth in his life. To a child beggar who lived on the streets in a precarious situation, it was like the legendary Pure Land of ultimate bliss. However, looking at it now, he felt even more dejected. "Danqing, you're back." A mortal woman in a cotton dress came out from the back of the hall to welcome him. Chu Danqing greeted her respectfully. "Mistress, this is senior sister Ru Exin and senior brother Li. Are you the Li Qingshan who won the Heavenly Maiden Scattering Blossoms painting? I've heard a lot about you." The woman bowed gracefully. She did not have any makeup on her face as she sized up Li Qingshan curiously. Li Qingshan was surprised. He had long heard that Chu Shidao took painting as his wife. Could it be this woman before him? However, she was not as breathtakingly beautiful as the rumors made her out to be. At best, she could only be considered a pretty daughter of a humble family. Even now, he could not sense a trace of falsehood from her. That lively life force and those eyes that were filled with emotion were no different from a real person. This was truly a miraculous skill. "This way, please," said the woman. They arrived at the inner chamber together. Chu Shidao was lying on the couch. He propped himself up and cupped his hands. "This old man is not feeling well. Please forgive me for not being able to come out to welcome you." His white hair was disheveled. Although he looked weak, he still retained his strength of character. The woman silently came to his back and combed his hair. She hummed an unknown tune softly with a relaxed expression. "You're too kind, senior. Please allow me to take your pulse." Ru Exin went forward, but Chu Shidao waved his hand. "There's no need. Although I'm not a doctor, I can still calculate my own life and death." "Danqing, you're doing something so useless again." "Danqing is just being filial. You don't appreciate it." The woman patted Chu Shidao's head lightly. Chu Shidao flew into a rage. "I'm teaching my disciple a lesson. There's no need for you to meddle. Get out." The woman walked towards the wall without saying a word. There was a blank, yellowed painting hanging there. She walked straight into it and turned into a painting. She looked at Chu Shidao with a calm expression. Li Qingshan thought, even someone with Chu Shidao's temperament can't control his temper at a moment of life and death. But it's no wonder. Even at such a time, this mistress still showed no signs of grief. She was just a painting after all. No matter how much she looked like a person, she would not be able to understand human emotions. Chu Shidao pointed at the painting and shouted, "Danqing, roll up the painting. Don't let me see her." Chu Danqing looked like he was in a difficult position, but he did not dare to disobey his master's order. He bowed towards the painting and said, "Mistress, master is not in a good mood." Before he could finish, the mistress turned around. Chu Danqing rolled up the painting and passed it to Chu Shidao. Chu Shidao let out a long breath. The anger on his face melted like snow. He smiled and said, "I've made a fool of myself." Li Qingshan said, "Senior's health is more important. Why are you angry over a painting? If you don't like it, you can just change it to something else." Chu Danqing frowned. She was not just a painting. She was a gentle lady who looked after him as he grew up. She was like his mother. Chu Shidao smiled and said, "I don't have that much time. I won't be able to paint her again even if I have another 100 years. His gaze turned deep as he gently stroked the scroll. When I painted her, I was still a little chi practitioner who had just joined the sect. Not to mention the lack of charm in the painting, I couldn't even draw her face well. I wanted to paint a peerless beauty, but the result was a little out of shape. She barely left the painting scroll, but there was no life in her. She spoke like a parrot and she was dumb. When I asked her to grind the ink for me, she would always knock over the ink stone. Later on, I don't know why, but I became more and more. Actually, I'm the same as Dan Qing. Although I like painting, I really don't plan on marrying a painting. Life is unpredictable. Chu Sherdao sighed with a smile. He held the scroll as if he was holding a peerless treasure. He was filled with longing and reluctance. Li Qingshan and Ru Exen looked at each other, speechless. What he had poured into the painting was not pen and ink, but the feelings of his entire life. He had turned this clumsy painting of an apprentice into a living being that understood joy, anger, sorrow, and joy. No pop-up window. Chapter 448. Chu Sherdao then said to Ru Exen, "It's good that you're here. I heard from Brother Hua that you're good at concocting strange medicines. You've even concocted the water of recollection that can help people recall memories." Ru Exen nodded. "I still have a lot of water of memory." Chu Sherdao shook his head. "I have enough memories. Can you refine a medicine with the opposite effect?" "The opposite of the water of recollection, wasn't it the water of forgetfulness?" Li Qingshan said. "Isn't that the soup of Mengpo?" "Not bad." Chu Sherdao nodded with a smile as he stared at the scroll in his hand in a daze. Ru Exen suddenly understood. "Senior, you want to give her?" Chu Sherdao's eyes were like water. "The road to the Yellow Springs is long, and she won't be able to follow me to the Bridge of Helplessness. I can't possibly drink Granny Meng's soup alone." "Master, how can this be?" Chu Danqing's expression changed drastically. "I have my own plans." Chu Sherdao raised his hand and said to Ru Exen, "I don't have much to give. Here's 3 taels of dusk cinnabar. You can use it as medicine. Consider it your reward." He took out a round metal paint box from his 100 treasures pouch and passed it to Ru Exen. Ru Exen opened the paint box, and a misty red overflowed from it. It was like the afterglow of the setting sun, with countless layers of color changes. Light red, blood red, and purple red dyed the whole house. It was as if the afterglow of the setting sun had been collected and sealed in this small box. Not only was it beautiful, but the spiritual energy it harnessed was also astonishing. Ru Exen returned it with both hands and said, "This is too precious, I can't accept it. I will do my best to fulfill Senior's request, but I might not be able to fulfill it. Sometimes, forgetting is harder than remembering." "That's right. Take it. Regardless of success or failure, it's yours." Chu Sherdao chuckled and said, "Qingshan, I've actually been wanting to meet you for a long time. I really missed it. Painting. The 2 guests I've invited today are very much to my liking." "As long as Master is happy," Li Qingshan said. "Could it be that Senior still wants to take back the Heavenly Maiden Scattering Blossoms painting? It's just a painting. It's not worth mentioning." Chu Sherdao took out a painting album. In his hand was the divine brush Maoliang that Li Qingshan had used to defeat Chu Danqing in the past. "This is your masterpiece." Chu Danqing did not understand. He had also seen this album before. The painting was clumsy and not worth mentioning, but Chu Sherdao flipped through it for a long time, as if he could not bear to put it down. "You flatter me, Senior." Li Qingshan was also somewhat baffled. "I had nothing to do on my sickbed, so I drew a few things according to this. They can't really be regarded as paintings. They're just for fun." As Chu Sherdao said that, he passed a piece of paper to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan took it and saw that it also had the words Magic Brush Maoliang written on it. Gradually, it melted into a blob of ink and turned into scenes of people running back and forth, speaking to each other. That was the plot of the story. The artist's painting skills. Drawing fish that could swim and birds that could chirp were all basic skills. Only by freeing the objects in the painting from the constraints of the paper could one be considered a beginner. To Chu Sherdao, this could only be considered a game doodle. However, the liveliness and charm it displayed stunned even Li Qingshan, who had experienced many movies and animations. What was this? A master animator? Children would be so happy to see it. No, even adults would love it so much that they could not bear to part with it. Painting and calligraphy are inseparable. Novelists and artists are considered to be at the bottom of the list. However, if we can work together, there will be great development. It's you who reminded me that painting can also be used in this way. Master, you're right. Li Qingshan's mind was already spinning. With the artist's skills, even movies would not be a problem, let alone animations. Moreover, all of them would be shocking scenes that were more powerful than any special effects in his previous life. What was a 3D effect? This could even fly out of the screen when one was excited. The effects would be shocking. Moreover, it would eliminate the barrier of words, so the accumulation of wish power would be even faster. Chu Danqing frowned and said, Master, are you saying that I should also condense the divine talisman of great creation to gather wish power? Chu Sherdao grabbed Chu Danqing and Li Qingshan's hands and said earnestly, the two of you both have the word Qing in your names. It's also fate. If we can work together sincerely, there's no need to worry about not accomplishing great things. Li Qingshan thought, Fu Qingjin and I both have the word Qing in our names. Master, I will. Chu Danqing naturally obeyed and looked at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan patted Chu Danqing's shoulder and said, Senior, don't worry. I also admire Danqing's character. We will definitely work together to achieve great things. He would write the script and Chu Danqing would draw it. After touring around, they would split the profits, not the box office but the wish power. Wouldn't that be great? Chu Sherdao revealed a satisfied smile. Ru Xen teased, it's a pity that these two Qings are both men. Otherwise, they could cultivate both yin and yang. Li Qingshan glared at her, and Chu Danqing coughed a few times. Chu Sherdao smiled and said, You're wrong, my dear nephew. Congeniality makes them lovers. Like-minded makes them Dao companions. Isn't the latter far better than the former? Chu Danqing said, You only dare to say that because Master's wife isn't here? Chu Sherdao caressed the scroll and said, Heh, she's my confidant. The word, confidant, doesn't matter about gender. Alright, let's change the topic. Li Qingshan said, Oh right, I have 3 scrolls here. I'd like to invite Senior to appraise them. Chu Sherdao accepted the 3 scrolls of the cursive sword calligraphy from Li Qingshan and unfurled them one by one. His eyes suddenly shone with dazzling light as he stared at the 3 pieces of sword calligraphy, as if he wanted to engrave them into his heart. His expression was first shocked, then filled with endless regret. Li Qingshan hurriedly asked, Senior, can you tell the origin of these 3 scrolls? Chu Sherdao let out a long sigh and said, The origin of these 3 scrolls is not simple at all. They're from a very long time ago, even before the Great Xia dynasty. Have you heard of the 9 states' 5 absolutes? May I know which 5 seniors? Li Qingshan asked. How bold. There were so many extraordinary people in the world who would dare to use the word absolutes. After understanding how big the 9 states were, he expressed heartfelt respect for those who dared to use the word absolutes. These 5 people must be powerful figures that have surpassed the ancients and the contemporaries. Chu Sherdao shook his head and said, The 9 states' 5 absolutes are not 5 people, but 1 person. 1 person? Who is it? Li Qingshan and the other 2 were astonished. I've only heard bits and pieces from my master. It's rumored that this person is also the reincarnation of a celestial. After awakening his innate wisdom, he possesses unbelievable wisdom and power. Because he's unparalleled in sword, zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, he's known as the 5 Absolutes Immortal, also known as the 9-5 Heavenly Lord. If I'm not wrong, these scrolls must be his handiwork. Li Qingshan was delighted. His cursive sword calligraphy's origin was indeed impressive. It was no wonder that he was praised by Brother Ox with a mere spirit artifact. If he could collect all of them, wouldn't he be able to kill gods and Buddhas if they stood in his way? Xian said, Senior, there are always many experts in the world. There should be many cultivators who are proficient in the way of the sword and calligraphy, right? Chu Shidao changed the topic and asked, Danqing, have you figured it out? Yes, Master. Chu Danqing picked up another scroll and looked at it carefully. Other than the way of the sword and calligraphy, there seems to be painting as well. Chu Shidao nodded in satisfaction. If you're not a painter, it'll be difficult to see this. Painting isn't widespread. I really can't think of a second person who is proficient in all three and can combine them. Chapter 449. This painting's artistic skill is truly astonishing. No matter how it's cut, the essence, qi, and spirit within are still intact. It may be small, but it's complete. It can even be used as a spirit artifact. It's truly incredible. If I could see it in its original form, I could die without regrets. Chu Shidao was both amazed and regretful. Li Qingshan asked, Is there a way to combine these three scrolls into one? If we can separate them, we can naturally combine them. I'm not talented, but I might be able to comprehend your divine skill and try to repair it. Li Qingshan was overjoyed. If you can help me, I definitely won't let you waste your efforts. No, Master, your body is already like this. How can you waste your energy? Chu Danqing stuffed the cursive sword calligraphy back to Li Qingshan. Sorry, senior brother. I can't fulfill your wish. It's time for Master to rest. Li Qingshan could not say anything else. He could only try another path. Do you want me to lie on the bed and meet the king of hell? Chu Shidao slapped the side of the bed and roared at Chu Danqing, Give me the painting. Li Qingshan, don't you want an artifact? Chu Shidao's temper flared, and no one could dissuade him. In the end, Li Qingshan left the three scrolls of cursive sword calligraphy behind and left. The white cloud soared into the sky, and the vast land sped backward. The wind whistled and clothes fluttered. Li Qingshan sighed. They basically seem like a family. They're so deeply in love. It's enviable. Ruexin sat cross-legged on the cloud. It's not necessarily a good thing for people of our generation to be too affectionate. Only those who forget their emotions can become immortals. If that's really the case, then it's fine if they don't become immortals. A strange smile appeared on Ruexin's face. It was as if she was looking at a stubborn child. Li Qingshan said, What, have you been charmed by my charm? A little. Then you're too late. Haven't you heard of the saying, the pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first? Ruexin leaned close to Li Qingshan, exhaling a fragrant breath and talking with a smile. Her watery eyes seemed to flow with an indescribable affection. Li Qingshan had known her for a long time. How could he fall for it again? Stop fooling around. Can you really refine this water of oblivion? Ruexin said, Let's give it a try. Maybe I need it too. It had always been the hardest to forget emotions. It was the word forget. After parting ways in the Chain Mountains, Li Qingshan returned to his cave abode and saw Little and sitting in the middle. The flames on Xiao Chen's head blazed fiercely. The huge skulls formed by the skull prayer beads opened their mouths and spewed out flames, making them burn even more fiercely. One by one, the corpses flew into the fire and melted in the blink of an eye. They melted into a ball of white liquid at the center of the fire and scattered in all directions. Some of them scattered into the skull's mouth, while others dripped down. As the refinement of the skull prayer beads deepened, it was not just the number that increased. Its overall strength constantly increased as well, and the number of corpses consumed increased as well. After who knew how many corpses were consumed, the white liquid gradually solidified, turning into a round shape. It was another skull prayer bead. Little and stood up and smiled sweetly. I'm about to reach the first layer of the path of white bone and great beauty. The so-called foundation establishment realm was true foundation establishment to her. She had cultivated arduously for many years, and only now did she barely manage to build up her body and mind, establishing a sufficient foundation for the path of white bone and great beauty, a divine ability from beyond the heavens. Li Qingshan said, "Should I praise you for cultivating quickly or slowly? If you reach the first layer, how does it compare to that blood shadow?" Little and said, "He definitely won't be able to escape. Even if he fights you, he might not necessarily lose." "Little girl, I'll show you my power right now." Li Qingshan lunged over with a smile. Little and dodged far away, leaving behind a tinkling smile. Before darkness descended, many sects in the Clear River Prefecture carried out the same task. They removed their formations and stowed away their mechanisms and puppets before glancing back reluctantly. Afterwards, they took to the air together, abandoning the sects that they had managed for many years and beginning a great migration. Due to Qi practitioners, the migrating groups did not move quickly. However, when they encountered other sects, they would group up and advance towards the same destination. The sky was about to turn dark. The setting sun dyed the surrounding clouds red. Hua Sengzan stood on his sword and gazed down from above. All he saw were specks of light, like fireflies, of cultivators from various sects flying into the clouds. Then he gazed at the crescent moon in the distance and said to Han Tie beside him, "I never thought a single moon devil would be able to force Fu Qingjin and the entire demon slayer into such dire straits." Han Tie said, "I'd like to see him clash with me." Hua Sengzan said, "I hope you won't get the chance to do that." Before he had even finished speaking, a scarlet figure shot through the air and arrived above the Rose Cloud sect. His wings of wind were like a god's, and his scarlet hair drifted about. His ruby-like eyes locked onto Hua and Tai. Hua Sengzan was alarmed. He smiled bitterly. "You sure are a jinx." Han Tie was stern, ready to strike. Li Qingshan left his main body in the mountains to take medicine and cultivate. He sent his doppelganger out to check on the demon slayer's movements. He was prepared to engage in a few more harassment battles. If there was a chance, he would eliminate a few more sections. This way, he would have more bargaining chips for the upcoming alliance. He would be able to suppress the Fu Qingjin demon slayer in all aspects. Then he encountered this great migration. He traced it all the way to this place. However, he encountered Hua and Tai, who had come to investigate. Seeing that they were on high alert, Li Qingshan smiled in his heart. He lowered his head and looked at the Rose Cloud sect. Hua Sengzan relaxed. He pulled Han Tie, who was eager to fight, and quietly retreated. Since the other party had no intention of attacking, then it couldn't be any better. Not to mention that their chances of winning were slim. Even if they were lucky enough to win, they wouldn't be able to stop him. Below them was the Demon Slayer's base camp. It wasn't their turn to attack. The Demon Slayer cultivators also sensed Li Qingshan's presence. Panic spread. The Qi practitioners sped up and flew towards the clouds. The Foundation establishment cultivators appeared one after another. They raised their heads to look at the figure that forced them here. Their hearts were filled with hatred and fear. No one took the initiative to challenge him. They just stared at each other in silence. Hua Sengzan was slightly moved. He alone was able to make thousands of cultivators not dare to challenge him. What kind of power was this? This was the Moon Devil. However, when he saw him with his own eyes, he realized that he wasn't as vicious and violent as he had imagined. His calm and composed appearance had an indescribable sense of peace and tranquility. Before Fu Qingjin entered secluded cultivation to tend to his wounds, he had ordered them to avoid battle and avoid being provoked by demons, just in case they fell for the enemy's schemes. He had to deal with the situation by remaining unchanged. The current Rose Cloud sect had been established by Fu Qingjin as the Demon Slayer's base camp in the Clear River Prefecture. Who knew how many powerful formations and who knew how many cannons had been set up there? If Li Qingshan was bold enough to go down there, he would be walking into a trap. Looks like Fu Qingjin isn't here. Li Qingshan muttered to himself. He shoved his hands into his pockets and set foot on an invisible path of heaven that blanketed the stars, making his way off into the distance. Everyone could not help but ease up a little. Hua Sengzan and Han Tie exchanged glances and became sterner. An opponent like that was truly terrifying. The matter of forming an alliance was truly pressing. On the next day, the Demon Slayer sent a message. Fu Qingjin used the excuse of recovering from secluded cultivation to postpone the matter of forming an alliance indefinitely. Originally, this was expected. Fu Qingjin would never negotiate with the academy in his weakened state. But very soon, everyone realized the viciousness of Fu Qingjin's move. He was not targeting demons but the academy. In the Hawkwolf Guard of the prefectural city, Wang Puxi and Hua Sengzan were currently conversing. Thump, thump, thump. 3 knocks came from the door. Come in. Greetings, commanders. Another garrison has been breached by demons today. 17 Hawkwolf guards have fallen in battle. Hua Qinglu was dressed in scarlet clothes. After 3 years of cultivation, she had finally reached the 7th layer and been promoted to a Scarlet Wolf Guard. The clean Scarlet Wolf uniform should have made her seem valiant, but it outlined her slender figure, making her seem even more graceful. Wang Puxi slammed the table and shivered. The sects could ignore everything, but the various academies of the 100 schools of thought had the responsibility of protecting the people on behalf of the emperor. They had to constantly send people everywhere to kill the demons that caused trouble. Having lost the restraints of the sects, it wasn't just the Hawkwolf Guard. Even the disciples of the academy had suffered heavy losses recently. Hua Sengzan said, "I didn't think we'd be outmaneuvered instead. He's trying to make us realize that we're interdependent. He's trying to put us in a disadvantageous position when we negotiate with the alliance." Wang Puxi said, "They've caused trouble and turned the entire prefecture into hell, but they've retreated as soon as the situation has taken a turn for the worse. Instead, they've used the people as hostages to threaten us. How despicable." Fu Qingjin, Sword Collection Palace. Hua Sengzan raised his head and exhaled. The rock demon and blood demon are massacring everywhere. Even if we send more people, it'll be difficult to stop them. The only fortunate thing is that the moon devil hasn't taken action. Even the night roamers seem to have restrained themselves, or the situation would be even more difficult to deal with, which would only make us more worried. We need to go ahead with the alliance. Wang Puxi frowned. At a time like this, whoever could not help but contact the other party first would be at a disadvantage. Hua Sengzan said, "Qinglu, has Zijian been well recently?" Hua Qinglu said rather helplessly, "I've tried to persuade her to cultivate more, but she's in a very bad mood. She doesn't want to remain in the 100 schools of thought. She wants to contribute to the outside world. I've already asked her father to persuade her." Over the past 3 years, Hua Sengzan had protected Yu Zijian even more than Hua Qinglu. After all, this involved the successor of the Violet Cloud Sword. If she died in battle, the Sword Collection Palace would definitely fly into a thunderous rage. The situation might be even worse than losing the war. He had even made arrangements for Yu Shuquang and the others. If it were anyone else, they would be overjoyed, but Yu Zijian was rather different. Hua Sengzan pondered for a while. "I agree with her going out to train. Let's give her some safe missions first." However, once she left the protection of the formations, were there any missions that were absolutely safe? This was a conflict of interest between 2 organizations, yet he had to use this kind-hearted girl as a bargaining chip. He did not feel good about it either, but at a time like this, there was no other suitable method. As a member of the 100 schools of thought, he had to plan for the interests of the 100 schools of thought as a whole. It was just like how humans had to fight demons. Hua Qinglu hesitated. "All right, but I want to carry out the missions with her." After Hua Qinglu left, Wang Puxi asked in confusion, "What does Yu Zijian have to do with this?" Hua Sengzan thought about it and decided to tell him the truth. Wang Puxi listened to him. "I see. I've always felt that you're a little overly concerned about Yu Zijian. I thought you'd finally fallen in love with someone else. This is a good move. However, we need to send a foundation establishment cultivator to protect them secretly. They have to be trustworthy, and they can't be too weak. They also have to be able to hide themselves." Hua Sengzan smiled. "I have a suitable candidate in mind. P.S. I'm currently in Zhengzhou, preparing to attend a gathering on Qidian. Although I've brought my computer, the updates might be a little unstable, so please forgive me. To be continued." Chapter 450. Li Qingshan received the message and hurried over to the Hawkwolf Guard of the Clear River Prefecture. He pushed open the door and entered. "What's the matter?" "Kid, I have a mission for you." Wang Pushi looked at the nimble Li Qingshan and nodded in satisfaction inside. No matter how unruly he was still a trustworthy person. "What mission?" Li Qingshan thought to himself. Sure enough, he knew a little about the current predicament the 100 schools of thought faced. Fu Qingjin's actions instead erased his sense of guilt. He did not even care about the person who had started this, so what was there to feel guilty about when he was the one who faced the enemy head-on? Hua Sengzan paced around in deep thought, arriving beside Li Qingshan. "You know my younger sister and Yu Zijian, right?" Li Qingshan said, "Of course. What do you think of them? They're both good girls." "What, you want to propose marriage for me and marry your younger sister to me?" Li Qingshan smiled. Hua Sengzan smiled as well. "You have the right. If you can get Qiongji and Chenglu to nod, I won't interfere. Your mission is to protect them secretly." The reason for this mission was inexplicable. It was rather strange. How could regular Foundation establishment cultivators have the patience to protect two Qi practitioners? That sliver of goodwill clearly became extremely important. "I remember that. It's been 3 years since we last met. Qinglu has become even more beautiful. Let's stop joking around. Where am I supposed to protect them?" Wang Pushi said, "Nowhere. It's just a few simple missions." Li Qingshan was perplexed. "You want a Foundation establishment cultivator to protect two Qi practitioners? You sure are thoughtful. Since there's danger, just get them to stay put. Can't you just get me to complete the mission?" Hua Sengzan said apologetically, "This is extremely important, so I can't explain it to you. And not only can you not let them know about this, but you can't let anyone else know either. I know it doesn't make sense. Apart from you, I don't trust anyone else. If you trust me, why aren't you telling me the truth? All right, I won't trouble you. Don't worry. As long as I'm here, no one can touch a single hair on them. No, if it's not life-threatening, don't do anything. Just watch and that's enough. Just treat it as training for them." "Interesting, you've really piqued my curiosity." He left the Hawkwolf Guard. Li Qingshan turned in the direction of the Cloud Wisp Association. He did not cast any spells. He walked slowly like a chariot. He blended into the crowd. Right now, it was the end of the year. The entire Clear River Prefecture was bustling with activity and joy, as if it had not been affected by the war at all. On the contrary, due to the chaos of war, the prefectural city became the only peaceful place. Countless people moved their families there, which created a strange kind of prosperity. Most cultivators didn't have the concept of celebrating a new year. Li Qingshan had not seen such a scene in a long time. He felt a sense of familiarity as he followed the flow of people. Before long, they arrived at the entrance of the Cloud Wisp Association. The 3 words Cloud Wisp Association were written on the fiery red archway. It was decorated with lanterns and banners everywhere, giving off a joyous atmosphere. Performances were currently taking place inside. Operas, storytelling, and singing were all available, but the price was extremely cheap. It only cost a few copper coins, and you could spend an entire afternoon sitting in a theater in the dead of winter, drinking hot tea and eating snacks. You could forget about the troubles of the mortal world amidst one story after another. It had already become a trend in the Clear River Prefecture. Li Qingshan walked past the archway and tossed a few taels of silver before entering the newly built theater. A gust of hot air greeted him. The theater was packed, numbering around 1,000 people. In the center was an old man who was telling a story loudly. He was telling the story of the Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber. The inscriptions on the ground amplified his voice several times over, reaching every corner clearly. In a room behind the Cloud Wisp Association, Sun Fubai and Lu Chuanfeng sat opposite one another. Sun Fubai grumbled, "Junior brother, since you've seen Qingshan, why don't you get him to come over and discuss the next step of the plan?" Lu Chuanfeng said, "What's there to discuss? It's so chaotic outside. None of the plans can be carried out. It's just within the Clear River Prefecture. Just having us is enough." Speaking of these difficulties, we'll be scolded again. Scolded by who? Long time no see, Uncle Fu. Your cultivation has improved again. Li Qingshan walked in with a smile. All he saw was Sun Fubai sitting on a round-back chair. He wore thin, gray robes, and his hair and beard were all white. However, he was in better spirits instead. His true qi surged through his various meridians. He was close to the peak of the 10th layer. Sun Fubai leapt to his feet and said in surprise, Qingshan, you've finally come. He studied him and was greatly gratified. I heard you've reached foundation establishment. Sure enough, sure enough. Very good, very good. Li Qingshan sat down and listened to Sun Fubai explain the development of the Cloud Wisp Association. Just like what Lu Chuanfeng had said, they had developed very well in the prefectural city. They had already opened up many branches, but their situation was extremely horrible in other places. Bandits were everywhere, and demons ran amok. Their lives were in constant danger, so who would be in the mood to listen to their stories? Lu Chuanfeng said, especially now that some moon devil has appeared, forcing the demon slayer to cower in fear. Perhaps before long, the Clear River Prefecture will become the world of demons. Sun Fubai frowned. Junior brother, why are you saying something so depressing again? The situation will improve. The war won't last forever. We need to make preparations right now to win the hearts of the people. I visited the school of painting a while ago. Li Qingshan told him about Chu Shidao's idea. Sun Fubai's eyes lit up. That's a good idea. Qingshan, if you don't have time, why don't you go visit the school of painting? Li Qingshan said, it's best if you don't go visit him for now. Master Chu's health isn't particularly good. Sun Fubai nodded, expressing his understanding. He smiled. Qingshan, with your return, our school of novels seems to have gained a pillar of support. Right now, the schools are replacing the old with the new. Junior brother, you can give up your position. Lu Chuanfeng became nervous. He was afraid of seeing Li Qingshan, and he was also afraid of mentioning this. He had just gotten a taste of being a schoolmaster, and he had a few disciples now, so he was very reluctant to give up his position. Fortunately, Li Qingshan declined immediately, which allowed Lu Chuanfeng to ease up. He poured him a cup of tea in a hurry. Sun Fubai suddenly asked, Qingshan, do you practice the arts of the boundless ocean? That's right. Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. However, this wasn't a secret in the 100 schools of thought, so it wasn't strange that Sun Fubai knew about it. Sun Fubai recalled. Back then, there was this cultivation method in my bookstore, but it was only the first half. Later, I gave it to a black, burly man. Lu Chuanfeng said, it's still a cultivation method. Why did you give it to him? Sun Fubai said in annoyance, isn't it because of your book that made me lose face? Plus, that big man has a forthright personality. He even said that if he was lucky enough to find all the cultivation methods in the future, he would send this cultivation method to me. I didn't expect that you would be practicing this cultivation method. What a coincidence. Who knows where that burly man is now, and whether he's dead or alive. Why don't I let you take a look at this cultivation method? At least I've fulfilled one of my wishes. Li Qingshan smiled. He took out the jade scroll and gave it to Sun Fubai. The promise of the past had been fulfilled in this way. Life was truly unpredictable. P.S. The flight arrived in the afternoon, but he only arrived at the hotel after 11. He was so tired that he went to sleep. Chapter 451. How can I do that? Sun Fubai declined in a hurry. Just take a look. Li Qingshan shoved the jade slip into his hand without giving him any chance to explain. Sun Fubai thought, this boldness is rather similar to that person from the past. Regular people would treat a special cultivation method like a treasure when they obtained it. Why would they show it to others so easily? Sun Fubai roughly skimmed through the jade slip and then handed it over. This cultivation method is indeed shockingly powerful. What's even rarer is that it suits your temperament very well. It will definitely be able to bring glory to you. I believe that the school of novels will flourish in your hands too, Uncle Fu. Li Qingshan placed a true spirit pill in Sun Fubai's hand. This is far too valuable. I really can't accept it. It's all thanks to Uncle Fu's efforts in the past few years that I've been able to obtain so much power of belief. If the School of Novels can gain another foundation establishment cultivator, what's there to worry about when the three of us work together? After chatting a little more, Li Qingshan left Clear River City and arrived at the shore of the Lake of Dragons and Snakes. Gazing at the rolling reeds, he thought about the time he spent here with Han Qiongji in the past. He thought, I wonder how Qiongji is doing. Has she reached foundation establishment yet? He sat down in the mist that was as thin as silk and took out the illusory water sword of invisibility. He stroked the sword gently, and ripples of light rippled out. Both he and the sword vanished without a trace. He withdrew his thoughts and sank them into his sea of qi. The water's spiritual energy surged like the sea. In the sea, a divine talisman of great creation shone slightly dimly. Ever since he reached foundation establishment, he had been tied up with various matters. He mainly practiced the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine. Now, he could finally settle down and reach the realm of the divine talisman of great creation. He also took a step forward. Waves surged in his sea of qi. Waves flew out of the surface of the sea, spiraling towards the divine talisman of great creation. They formed a ball of water, like a huge cocoon, gradually burrowing into the divine talisman of great creation. The sun was high in the sky. The mist gradually dispersed. The ball of water that had condensed in Li Qingshan's body shattered. The divine talisman of great creation shone brightly. The mural twisted and turned, becoming even more mysterious and complex. Amidst the surging brilliance, one could vaguely see the birth of all living things, flowers and trees. Birds and beasts were everywhere, and nothing was tolerated. Li Qingshan's figure appeared out of thin air. He twisted and turned for a moment before turning invisible again. A jackdaw appeared out of thin air, hovering in midair. Li Qingshan stared at the jackdaw on his wrist. This was what he had created with the help of the divine talisman of great creation. Sure enough, it was vivid and lifelike. Zhang Xian infused a sliver of his spiritual perception into it before raising his hand. The jackdaws spread their wings and soared high into the sky. With the sound of flapping wings, countless jackdaws scattered into the sky, turning into black dots. Li Qingshan seemed to have the compound eyes of an insect. Countless scenes appeared in his mind. It was as if countless cameras had been set up around the entire lake of dragons and snakes, giving it an astonishing view. The amount of power of faith required to conjure these crows was not large. The divine talisman of great creation only consumed a little bit of its light before it was quickly replenished by the newly obtained power of faith. However, it greatly increased the range of his divine telekinesis. Although he could not examine it closely, he could see and hear it. In the 100 schools of thought, a group of young disciples made their way through the formation of dragons and snakes bit by bit, crossing the lake of dragons and snakes and arriving on the shore. A jackdaw descended from the sky, landing on a withered branch. Its pitch-black eyes reflected their figures. Li Qingshan saw Hua Qinglu with a single glance through the eyes. She had become even more beautiful. In her scarlet clothes, she was like a fully bloomed rose, giving off an alluring fragrance that attracted butterflies, bees, and bees. The gazes of the male disciples in the surroundings were basically unable to shift away for even a moment. They fawned over her. She smiled at them in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. She vaguely possessed the bearing of an elder brother. She no longer possessed any childishness. Time slipped away unknowingly. The young girl who pretended to be mature in the past had become the person she wanted to be. Zijian, let's go. Hua Qinglu said gently. Only then did some true gentleness appear in her eyes. Yeah, Yu Zijian said gently. How did she become like this? Li Qingshan frowned slightly. Yu Zijian wore Daoist robes with her hair in a bun. She carried a sword on her back, which made her seem tall and slender, like a willow branch in the wind. However, she did not seem like her at all. She had lost her sunny appearance in his memories, becoming silent and quiet. There seemed to be an undispersible melancholy between her brows. She lowered her head like she was standing in the shadows. She was also a woman in her prime, but due to the lack of sunlight, she was like a wilting orchid nourished by rain and dew. Junior sister Yu, this must be your first time out on a mission, right? It's unavoidable for you to be a little nervous. Don't worry, it's just a few demonic beasts. There won't be any danger. Sun Yi patted his chest. He was also a disciple of the school of Daoism. His cultivation was at the 8th layer, which was the highest among the group. Although he did not show it, he did look down on Yu Zijian slightly inside. All this time, even a genius like Chu Tian had to take risks and carry out missions like the other disciples. Who knew how many dangers he had taken on and how many of his seniors and juniors had died? However, Yu Zijian was completely protected. All she had to do was cultivate on Wuwei Island, but in the end, she failed to achieve anything after 3 years, only reaching the 7th layer. She had failed to live up to her title as a genius. The second time, Yu Zijian's voice was very soft, such that Sun Yi did not hear it clearly. What? The second mission. Yu Zijian raised her voice slightly. You're talking about that time? Sun Yi and the other cultivators could not help but mock her. Sun even felt rather disgusted and resentful. He never thought she would actually be shameless enough to mention the mission that had humiliated the entire school of Daoism. On Wuwei Island, the slovenly Taoist priest gazed into the distance and frowned. His Taoist robes were just like before, but his cultivation had become more and more profound. He had already been recognized as the person most likely to undergo the second heavenly tribulation in his mother's prefecture. He gazed in the direction that Yu Zijian had left in and patted the stone railing gently. Zijian, oh Zijian. 3 years ago, he had personally arranged for the experiential mission. Hua Sengzan had objected, but he had scolded him back. The edge of a treasured sword was forged through sharpening. Experiential training like this was very important to cultivators. It could motivate them to work hard on cultivation. And it was only a simple investigation mission. However, the outcome was not what he had expected. Ever since she returned from the mission, she had become completely dejected. There were rumors in the 100 schools of thought that the genius of the school of Taoism had been frightened out of her wits, making a huge fool of herself. It was as if it had proven once again that no matter how great her talent was, it was pointless if she lacked a strong mind. As a result, he no longer forced her to carry out any more missions. She remained on Wuwei Island the entire time to cultivate, but her cultivation had stagnated until now. Hua Chenglu held Yu Zijian's hand. It was cold to the touch. I'm the leader of the mission this time, so you have to listen to my orders. The outside world isn't as safe as the 100 schools of thought. If you're afraid, it's best if you leave right now. Sun Yi studied Yu Zijian again inadvertently. The group flew off on their own artifacts. Soon after they had left, a jackdaw cried out and took off into the air. Li Qingshan leapt up and chased after it. The mist around her became even thicker. Just what had she gone through? This doubt even turned into anger. He had extremely special feelings for her. Hua Chenglu glanced back at Yu Zijian and felt even more guilty. She thought back to 3 years ago. A great plague had erupted in a small city 400 kilometers to the west of the Clear River Prefecture. Because there were traces of demon qi, they were suspected to be demonic beasts, which was why they had been sent to investigate. This was not a dangerous mission. Powerful demons would not act so sneakily, and Hua Chenglu had plenty of life-saving pills and talismans. As long as they did not run into demon generals at crucial moments, there would not be too many problems. Sirs, the patients are all here. Under the lead of a gray-robed old man, Yu Zijian stepped into the gloomy clinic with the afternoon sun on her back. With her sword on her back, she seemed valiant and invulnerable to evil. The clinic was deathly silent. There were no moans at all. Countless men and women lay on the ground haphazardly. Even when Yu Zijian walked past them, they did not react at all. It was as if they had already accepted their fates and were waiting for death, giving off an aura beforehand. Hua Chenglu hated this smell. She stood in the sunlight in the courtyard. The old man offered up some tea. Please have some tea, madam. Hua Qinglu accepted the tea. Just when she was about to drink it, she glanced at the old man. He was currently staring at the teacup in her hand. When he saw Hua Qinglu look over, he forced out a smile, wanting to express his kindness, but it only made him seem even more sinister. Hua Qinglu recalled Hua Sengzan's instructions. She took out a jade needle and placed it in the tea, but the needle did not react at all. She found her own carefulness to be rather funny. With so many sick people, it would be strange if she had a pleasant expression on her face. She then felt slightly proud of her own carefulness. She said to the old man, "Don't worry. We'll find the source of the plague." She drank the tea in a single gulp before glancing at the clinic again. All she saw was Yu Zijian frowning as she carefully examined every single patient. She admired her seriousness slightly. Yu Zijian then examined a sick man. She raised her head and said with certainty, "They give off a very faint demon qi." The moment she raised her head, a black speck swam past the whites of the eyes of the man on the ground. "Then there's no need to examine them so closely. I have a demon-searching compass, so all I need to do is find the demon and kill him." Hua Qinglu took out a spiritual artifact that resembled a compass from her 100 treasures pouch. Demons could hide their demon qi, but they would always leave behind faint traces. However, the demon-searching compass could sniff out these traces. Like a hunting dog, it could find where the demon was. It was extremely agile. The needle on the compass spun rapidly, which made Hua Qinglu frown. The surroundings were filled with demon qi, which interfered with the operation of the compass slightly. However, as the needle began to move, it finally stabilized and pointed towards the entrance of the clinic. Hua Qinglu turned around and said to the old man, "Move aside." The old man retreated to one side with his head lowered. Hua Qinglu said, "Thank you. Zijin, let's go." She carried the teacup and made her way out of the courtyard, but the moment she brushed past the old man, the needle spun with her, pointing towards the old man firmly. Hua Qinglu's expression changed. She tossed aside the teacup and reached towards the blade on her waist. She called out, "Zijian, be careful. The demon is right here." The teacup shattered on the ground, and the tea spilled all over the ground. There were black specks even smaller than the tip of a needle on the tea leaves. In the clinic, the old man's face gradually twisted, turning into a vicious smile that did not belong to humans. His teeth protruded from his lips, giving off a demon qi. All the patients in the clinic crawled to their feet like zombies. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.